This season Bungie rebalanced every SMG in Destiny. Some of them got a bit worse and others got a lot better. And I've spent the last several days in PvP testing every SMG in the game all over again. So you know what that means, it's time for a tier list. Starting off in alphabetical order, we have a 750 RPM SMG called Borrowed Time. This bad boy drops as a post-game reward for playing Gambit. Ooh! This makes it a bit annoying to grind for, at least for the mentally sane people watching the video.
Well, this aggression will not stand, man.
But luckily Bungie has recently made obtaining this gun a little bit less terrible. You can now turn in your engrams at the Drifter to deterministically grind for Borrowed Time. The rub is that Borrowed Time has a massive pool of 12 perks in each column, so getting that 5 out of 5 god roll is going to be really tough. You're going to want max range even after the changes. This means a range masterwork, full bore, yes even for controller players, ricochet rounds, and rangefinder for the perfect roll. You get to pick and choose what perk you want for the 4th column, and there's a lot of good options there. With the maximum range roll, you'll get a range stat of 70 together with an incredibly high zoom level of 16.5. To put this in perspective, that's more zoom than any other non-sunset SMG in the game right now after all the changes. And remember, the zoom stat directly scales your range stat, so this is a really big deal. Together with the decently high range stat, this makes Borrowed Time one of the longest range SMGs in the game. Plus, it has a better kill time than the 600 RPM options that slightly edge it out in the range department. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Borrowed Time is perhaps the best legendary SMG for base lethality in Destiny 2 as of Season 17. We're starting off the list very strong with a Borrowed Time going straight into the S tier. The Calus mini tool is a returning SMG from the Season of Opulence, and now it's brought back as part of the new Opulent loot pool in the Season of the Haunted. It's a 14 zoom lightweight SMG which specifically synergizes with the MIDA multi-tool exotic scout rifle for some additional movement benefits. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with a particularly high range stat and it doesn't get any perks to really help it either. To be fair, there are some interesting perks, like Incandescent is a new perk that causes a dragonfly-like explosion on kill which scorches nearby enemies. For pure consistency, something like Tap the Trigger and Moving Target isn't a bad pick either. Eye of the Storm has always been a fantastic perk for winning duels in PvP, and if you're clinging onto your stompies with a death grip still, Air Assault can help mitigate some of the hit to your inner accuracy. The mini tool certainly isn't a bad SMG, and it's way better than its fixed roll counterpart which we'll cover later in the list, but it still does get outclassed in almost every aspect. In terms of SMGs, there's undoubtedly better options out there, and even if you wanted to run a scout rifle in the kinetic slot, the Dead Man's Tale would probably do a better job than the MIDA anyway. I'll rank the Calus mini tool in the C tier. It's okay, but there's better options this season. Next up, we've got this piece of garbage. This backstabbing anti-op imposter is one of the lowest range SMGs in the game. Of course, it's a bit better after the recent buffs, but we're talking relative strength here. With the perks that it currently has access to, the Cold Front is just a horrible choice, and it's not even really worth your time. It's a nice SMG for PvE content, and it even had Dragonfly for a short period of time which made it really special. For PvP though, Cold Front is a bottom of the barrel option and it belongs in the D tier. The Death Adder is a lightweight 900 RPM SMG in the energy slot. It's a surprisingly old candidate which has long suffered from the common disease of low zoom-itis. And you'd hope that the recent zoom changes would help this, but nope, the Death Adder was left out of the upgrade party. It stayed as a 13 zoom SMG in today's meta, which is just unacceptable. This one's also going to end up in the D tier. Escape Velocity is a kinetic lightweight SMG which you can get as a post-game reward from Dares of Eternity. If you want one, keep an eye out for the rotating loot pool and make sure you farm it when it's actually available. It's essentially a Multimach clone. It has the same model, the same archetype, and the same high zoom scopes. Unfortunately, the Model 8 red sight got nerfed to only provide 15 zoom now, but this is still a great option. The Escape Velocity unfortunately doesn't get any lethality perks like the Multimach, but there's still some interesting picks here. Let me draw your attention over to Vorpal Weapon. You know how just about everyone in PvP fell in love with the Vorpal DMT a few seasons ago? Well, what if I told you that Escape Velocity can melt a super even faster and more reliably? My friend Maki, who's also helping with the analysis and script writing for the video, realized that the 900 RPM lightweight SMGs are the highest damage per second primary weapons in all of Destiny 2, provided that you land your headshots. In practice, this means you can melt supers really quickly. It also has access to Osmosis for PvE if you ever want to have an elemental SMG in the kinetic slot. I'm going to rank the Escape Velocity in its base form in the B tier, with a special note that it can be an amazing swappable to melt a roaming super. The Enyo-D has the same model as the OG Antiope, but it also comes with the second best scope. The ST Thermal Scope gives it 15 zoom and it also highlights your opponents. 15 zoom is more or less par these days for the more lethal SMGs, but for the 600 RPMs sometimes you can get a little bit more. If you max out the range, you can actually get that damage drop-off point to about 24 meters, which isn't bad by any means, but there's actually a few other options that can slightly surpass this mark. In terms of the perk pool, there's a new perk called Fragile Focus. It gives you bonus range until your enemy shoots at you. I'm not quite sure how to feel about this one. The extra range is always welcome, but having it be dependent on my opponent not shooting back at me feels a little bit off. It's definitely good for opening up an engagement, but the better your opponents are, the less useful the perk becomes. So try this one out if you get it to drop, you might really like it. I've had a lot of fun testing it myself, and I was lucky enough to already get the 5 out of 5 god roll with the new perk. In the right column, there's also Rampage and Multi-Kill Clip as your damage perks. A Vorpal weapon here can also be good for melting supers. Overall, the Enyo is just a great new SMG with solid range and awesome perks, which is why I'm going to rank it in the A tier. Every Waking Moment is a 600 RPM SMG from the moon. It has some really exciting perks including Rangefinder and Kill Clip. It has decent stats and it gets okay range thanks to Rangefinder. If you max out the range on this one, you're going to reach the same 24 meters as the Enyo. This SMG can also be very lethal if you get one of the damage perks rolling. Really, there isn't a whole lot more to say about it. It's a decent 600 RPM SMG which can perform really well if you get a good roll on it, but unfortunately it's been badly power corrupted by the Trials SMG's Shayura's Wrath, but we'll get to that one later on the list. While testing this one, I found the aesthetic and the sound to really not appeal to me at all. It's a good weapon on paper, but personally I really didn't enjoy using it that much, and I'd rather use some of the other better SMGs in the energy slot that directly compete with Every Waking Moment. So I'm going to drop this one down to the B tier, but if the look and feel of this gun is more up your alley, then I could see ranking it a little bit higher. Extraordinary Rendition is the kinetic 750 RPM SMG from Season of the Chosen. It's a real pity that you can't get this one anymore. It comes with 15 zoom inherently, a really high base range stat, and some excellent perks. If you're ever playing momentum control and happen to have this roll laying around, trust me, you really have to give it a try. It's hands down my favorite primary weapon in Momentum because every special ammo pickup automatically refills double your magazine size with overflow, and Rampage stacks up so easily with the fast time to kill in this mode. For regular PvP, Surplus is always great because the extra handling and reload speed are appreciated on an SMG, and stability on the aggressive archetypes is specifically never a bad thing either. There's also Zen Moment to mitigate the low stability for my controller folks out there, and Firmly Planted is also quite an underrated option for SMGs. Of course, it's better to not stay crouched while you're fighting with an SMG, and you should strafe around and try to throw off your opponent's aim while you mix in a few crouches of your own to throw them off. But there are two legit reasons to take Firmly Planted. First of all, the stability penalty during a slide can badly hurt on an SMG with such little base stability to begin with, so Firmly Planted can really mitigate that. And the second application of Firmly Planted would be when you're just a little bit outside of your effective range. The accuracy boost from Firmly Planted can help you land a few final shots to clean up your opponent from ridiculously long ranges. Whichever way you go, Extraordinary Rendition is an extraordinary choice for PvP. It's definitely going into the A tier. Forensic Nightmare is our first ever Stasis Element SMG. You can actually craft this one after you unlock the pattern for it. It pains me that the 600 RPM SMG gets a really low base zoom and no ways to boost it. Headstone could have been so awesome for PvP with various Stasis builds. Just imagine going on some sprees while abusing the damage resistance you get from crystals and Whisper of Chains. Unfortunately, the Forensic Nightmare has a max range of just about 20 meters, which is actually really bad for the slower killing SMGs. It's so sad to see such an awesome perk pool go to waste because of that bad range. It also has a really cool, unique aesthetic. I'm going to rank this one in the C tier just for the perks and the potential synergies with the Stasis builds, but you really shouldn't be using this one too much when there's so many better options on the table. Friction Fire is a kinetic 600 RPM SMG from the Season of the Hunt. Again, you can't get this one anymore and you're really missing out if you skip that season. Hopefully Bungie gives us a way to farm for these in the near future. It comes default with a maximum zoom level of 16, a really high base range stat, and access to Killing Wind. All this combined will let you stretch out the range to some pretty ridiculous levels, and I really mean that. The only SMG with more range than Friction Fire is the Shayura's Wrath for Trials. The Friction Fire also comes with Rampage as its only damage perk. Sure, Kill Clip is usually a better option, but Rampage can also put in some work. These days, I think Friction Fire is probably the best SMG in the kinetic slot, and it's going straight into the S tier. I'm sorry for those of you who didn't get this thing back in the day, and I really wish I would have kept a better roll for myself. Hopefully this one becomes farmable again soon. The Funnelweb is a new toy that the PvE community went crazy about last season. Funnily enough, with volatile rounds, it completely power corrupted the OG Recluse and made for some nasty PvE builds. As for PvP, it's a Vice 900 RPM lightweight SMG with 14 zoom. It also has access to Rangefinder and Killing Wind, and its scope highlights enemies. Just like the Death Adder, it's a good starter SMG with decent range and a lot of lethality. I'm going to rank this one in the B tier. It's a good SMG, but there are some better options out there, particularly for the energy slot. Oh, Ikelos, what have they done to you? For those of you not in the loop, the Ikelos SMG was a former fan favorite because it got Seraph rounds to magically extend the range way past the intended values. It has decent range considering the lower zoom stat, but there's some better options out there which make it really hard to justify using it for everyday Crucible. I'd like to make a special note though for Vorpal Weapon on the Ikelos. Just like the escape velocity, the Ikelos SMG has some awesome DPS values which can absolutely shred incoming supers. While the 750 RPM SMGs get a little bit less headshot DPS, they quickly make up for it in their body shot damage output. So on average, you'll be killing supers just as quickly with the Ikelos SMG. I still really love the look and feel of this thing, but it's just not as good relative to the competition as it was several seasons ago. I'm going to rank this one in the B tier, which might even be a little bit generous. For PvE though, it's one of only 2 SMGs that can directly create Warmind cells, so it'll always have some solid use cases depending on your build. The MIDA mini tool is a 900 RPM lightweight SMG which comes with a fixed roll. It's supposed to be paired with the exotic scout rifle called the MIDA multi-tool for some awesome movement buffs. Unfortunately, the mini tool comes with such a horrible range that it's really never worth using over the stronger alternatives out there. And now we also have the Calus mini tool, which is basically just a better version of the original MIDA's static roll. This one's going straight into the D tier, no questions asked. If we had an F tier for this video, I think this one might even drop another tier down there. Ah yes, the Multimach, my favorite SMG which I still don't have a god roll for. This 900 RPM lightweight SMG from the Iron Banner took the Crucible by storm ever since it was first introduced during the season of the Chosen. It gets very good base stats and some incredibly juicy perk options. To address the elephant in the room, the Multimach gets the unique perk Iron Reach for an extra 20 range at the cost of some stability. When you pair this with the Model 8 red scope that increases the zoom value, the Multimach has an incredibly rangy and lethal SMG. It's debatable if the hit to stability is worth it for controller players, but in my book, range is king on SMGs. Even with the nerf to the Model 8 scope, the Multimach still challenges the range of something like the Borrowed Time. It's a great SMG, but it was slightly power crept by some other options, especially after the SMG changes. I'm going to rank it in the A tier these days. It's still a fantastic weapon, but I think the zoom changes just barely knock it out of the S tier territory. The Osteo Striga is a new weapon of sorrow brought to us with the launch of the Witch Queen. As far as my PvP review goes, this thing shoots actual projectiles which slowly track towards their target. This is just no good in today's Crucible where almost all other weapons are hit scan. It does have some aggressive tracking which will reward headshots even if you're clearly aiming at the body, but with the kill times we experience in Crucible these days, I think most players are just better off with hit scan SMGs. So the Osteo is going into the D tier for PvP, but I do want to take a second to talk about its PvE applications. The poison burn damage really stacks up, and it can deliver some incredible damage even in tough content. Many players out there abuse the sheer damage output of the Osteo in endgame PvE to make most of the content of the Witch Queen a total cakewalk. Just like Thorn, you can also pair the Osteo with necrotic grips on a Warlock to spread that poison effect to nearby enemies. This makes it even deadlier than it is at base. Now if this was a PvE tier list, you'd bet this thing would be S tier, but alas, it stays in the D tier for now. Riskrunner is an exotic arc SMG which strongly benefited from the recent buffs to SMGs. It occupies the nearly extinct 900 RPM adaptive archetype. This one got hand-tuned by Bungie, so let me go over the changes really quickly. 900 RPM adaptive SMGs deal more body shot damage but less headshot damage than their lightweight counterparts. These SMGs are known for their leniency, which can potentially make them a favorite out of all the different SMG archetypes. In their past form, they offered an incredibly fast 1 second body shot time to kill. For context, only sidearms in their base form kill faster than 1 second for landing only body shots. Bungie apparently wasn't a big fan of this extreme leniency, so they increased the body shots to kill for adaptive SMGs by 1 hit. They'll still melt your opponents incredibly fast, and with the rapid stream of bullets, they're very lethal. Unfortunately, the real issue here is that Riskrunner also didn't receive that zoom buff. This left it with some really bad base range. Its exotic perk is also kinda hit and miss in the Crucible right now. You need to receive arc based damage to activate Arc Conductor. Once you proc it, the Riskrunner gets a slight damage increase, infinite magazine size, and it chains lightning to nearby enemies, while also protecting you from incoming arc damage. Usually your opponents are going to be smart enough to swap off of their arc weapons if they see you using the Riskrunner, so most of the time you're going to have to inflict some self damage to get the perk rolling. And if we're honest, there really aren't that many arc subclasses running around in PvP these days. Of course, weakening yourself prior to a duel can be a tricky proposition. So with such bad range, I really don't think the Riskrunner is worth using in PvP much right now. I'm going to rank this one in the D tier. The 7th Seraph is yet another SMG which missed the boat on the 13 zoom conversion. Being in the slowest killing archetype of all the options means that a substantial lack in the range department is also very harshly felt. For PvE, it can be a lot of fun because it creates Warmind cells, but then again, you could also just use the Ikelos for the same purpose. This one's going into the D tier, just don't use this in PvP. Stochastic Variable is a lightweight 900 RPM SMG from the old Future War Cult faction. It has 14 zoom and no rangefinder, which makes it a relatively weak choice by default. Of course, that's not the case in PvE, where something like Feeding Frenzy and Multi-Kill Clip can synergize to create an incredibly strong SMG even without any help from your subclass. I'm definitely going to keep one of these things around for when Arc 3.0 shows up. Going back to PvP though, the Stochastic Variable has one really unique perk called Phase Magazine. It converts the damage profile of the Stochastic Variable into the 600 RPM archetype, but keeps the lightweight buff. Even though it's kind of a fun novelty, in reality it's really not that good as a perk. The 600 RPM damage profile kills slower than the 900 RPM variant, and you also don't get any range in return. So I'm going to rank the Stochastic Variable in the C tier. It's okay, but easily outclassed by better options. Submission and its Adept variant are the new SMGs from the Vow of the Disciple raid. It's a 900 RPM lightweight in the kinetic slot, which directly competes with the Multimach. Initially, the community's response was a bit negative. The submission only had 15 zoom and it didn't even get iron reach like the Multimach. Today though, things have changed a little bit and the 15 zoom is actually pretty good. Remember, the Model 8 scope also got nerfed to only provide 15 zoom as well. Another thing going for the submission is its airborne accuracy stat. It's actually the same as the Multimach if you add an Icarus grip mod. This means that even though the submission doesn't get iron reach, you can still equip the Adept range mod if you have the Adept version. This way you get some bonus range without sacrificing the airborne effectiveness stat. With a perfect Adept roll, you're looking at an effective range just shy of 23 meters. Taking a look at the perk pool, the third column offers a lot of great options. There's Perpetual Motion for a flat buff to your stability, handling, and reload whenever you're in motion. Overflow can be great to double your magazine size if you walk over special ammo. Encore can give you more range or stability depending on if you land a headshot or a body shot. And in the right column you get Swashbuckler as the main damage perk, which is a really welcome perk to see on an SMG. When you're in close range, it's super easy to land that final melee blow to secure a 33% damage boost. In short, the submission is a very good and highly versatile SMG easily capable of chaining multiple kills. I don't think it's quite on the same level as Borrowed Time, but it definitely lands solidly in the A tier. For PvE, it also has some fantastic perk combinations like Frenzy and Subsistence that are worth trying out. Ah yes, the Shayura's Wrath, a 600 RPM Void SMG from Trials. It formerly came with 17 zoom, but that got nerfed down to 16 zoom this season. Still, with this much range and the potential of killing wind, the Adept Shayura's Wrath has the most range of any SMG in the game. And as the cherry on top, it comes with a very high airborne effectiveness stat. This makes it reasonable to slot an Adept range mod instead of an Adept Icarus grip mod. With 100 range, the Shayura's Wrath has actually almost as much range as the Nonghunger auto rifle. The main difference is that Shayura's has better in-air accuracy, more manageable recoil thanks to the precision frame, a higher body shot damage output, and potentially better perks. But on the flip side, the Nonghunger receives a little bit less damage fall off outside of its optimal range. And speaking of perks, the Shayura's Wrath doesn't disappoint here either. The combination of Killing Wind and Kill Clip or Tunnel Vision and Kill Clip can make some absolutely disgusting plays. Shayura's may not be the absolute best for pure lethality, but it presents a well-rounded package with the best in class for range and consistency. So for me, this is enough to declare it as the absolute king of legendary SMGs. This one easily lands in the S tier. The Tarrabah is a terrific SMG. Sorry for the dad joke, but I really do mean it. It's a 750 RPM SMG with a maximum 16 zoom and a very good base range. Sure, the Borrowed Time might beat it slightly range-wise, but the Tarrabah has a nasty trick up its sleeves which just might make it the better pick. You see, dealing or receiving damage charges up the exotic perk Ravenous Beast. Once you get it fully charged, it's go time. Having the ability to wipe a team after dealing damage or receiving some chip damage will force your opponents to respect the Tarrabah. This can be really effective against players who are super passive or use those really damage resist heavy setups. Basically, Tarrabah breaks the meta. It kind of breaks the video game. It's S tier without a doubt. I still personally prefer using Shayura's a bit more, but there's no doubt Tarrabah is a beast of an SMG. Up next is the SMG that had everyone tagging me on Twitter at the beginning of the season. If you're a longtime viewer, you'll probably remember my old video on the Hero's Burden back before the adaptive frames got nerfed. I'm so excited that Bungie decided to reintroduce it into Saladin's loot pool. You see, the great thing about this SMG is that it gets scopes. Wait, what? No. Bungie, what have you done? Okay, that's it. I'm uninstalling Destiny 2. I'll see you guys over on my Battlefield channel. Even though the Hero's Burden now only gets 14 zoom, it's actually saved a bit by Iron Reach. That adds a massive plus 20 range but does take away some stability. With only 14 zoom, you can still reach ranges just shy of 24 meters with a max range roll. In today's meta, this is a very respectable range value and it can definitely compete with the best SMGs out there, especially due to the increased leniency from the adaptive frame. You could also make a bit of an argument that the low zoom is kind of a benefit because it keeps your FOV more open while you're fighting. I'm going to rank this one in the A tier. It's still very good, but I'd want to see a bit more out of an S tier weapon. I think for now, I'm still going to be keeping my 17 zoom god roll of the old version. I just uploaded a full review of how the Huckleberry is performing in Season 17 a few days ago, so I'm going to keep this one short. Feel free to watch that video afterwards for a full breakdown, it's going to be linked in the description. In short, the Huckleberry is the most stylish SMG on this list thanks to the amazing reload animation. Man, Tex Mechanica really knows how to make some cool weapons. When you hold down the trigger, your gun fires faster thanks to Ride the Bull, and kills automatically reload the full magazine with the Catalyst. In PvE content, it has the old Rampage values for extra damage, but in PvP, it's just the standard Rampage. The downside is that Huckleberry's range in PvP is pretty mediocre. With 15 zoom and only 53 range stat, it just barely crosses that 20 meter mark for effective range. It's great fun in 6v6 modes, but there's certainly better options to try this season, so I'm going to rank this one in the B tier. The title is the new Void 750 RPM SMG from Guardian Games. Again, this is yet another SMG which initially flew under the radar because it only had 15 zoom and no rangefinder. It caps out at around 22 meters of effective range, which is okay but just not great. To its credit, there are some great PvE perk combos like One for All and Stats for All, but the PvP perks are maybe a bit less exciting. One interesting option is Focus Fury, which acts almost like a budget version of Tarrabah or Hawkmoon to let you punish those more passive players. Also, the Origin trait gives you a tiny bit of ability energy on kill, which can help with some of those grenade spam builds. This one's just okay, nothing too special for PvP, so we're going to land this one in the B tier. The Unforgiven is a new Void 750 RPM SMG which drops from the new Duality dungeon. This dungeon is really awesome and it was a blast to play, but unfortunately the Unforgiven has a, well, unforgivable shortcoming. It only has 14 zoom and no rangefinder. You probably know where this one's getting ranked just by that fact alone. But let me take a moment to talk about the PvE qualities of this SMG. If you pair this one with a good Void 3.0 build, this one might even surpass the Funnelweb. It gets the new perk Repulsor Brace, which gives you an overshield for killing an opponent with a Void debuff. If you have a good Volatile Rounds build going, then a debuff isn't too hard to come by. There's also Golden Tricorn on the table, which will be the highest potential damage boost when fully activated. Demolitionist and Adrenaline Junkie together are always a great combo for both PvE and PvP, and finally, Dragonfly is not a common sighting on SMGs, especially for Void ones. I don't know yet exactly how Dragonfly interacts with volatile rounds, but it could make for an excellent ad clearing monster. Alas, this is a PvP tier list of SMGs, so I gotta rank this one in the C tier. It just doesn't have anything special going for it inside of PvP despite looking so awesome. Tier lists like this one take a lot of time to put together, and I want to thank Manscaped for sponsoring this video, which helps me afford my awesome team. Manscaped offers everything you need for head-to-toe grooming as part of their Performance Package bundle. The Lawnmower 4.0 is a waterproof and cordless trimmer that's perfect as a gift or just for yourself. It features advanced skin-safe technology, which is going to help you prevent those painful nicks in areas where you definitely don't want them. Since it's waterproof, you can also use it in the shower with no problem, and it also comes with a super bright LED light, so it's really easy to see what you're doing. Manscaped also just released their new Boxers 2.0, which are some of the most comfortable boxers ever made. You have a variety of designs to choose from, ranging from the more professional black and pinstripe options over to something more on the fun side. The materials are super soft fabrics that are anti-chafing and moisture wicking. Maybe the most important part is that they're also tagless, so there's nothing to scratch you back there. Plus, they're designed to not roll over on you while you're wearing them. Basically, they're super comfy. Go to manscaped.com and use promo code Pattycakes to get 20% off and free shipping. If you enjoyed this video, a like rating really helps me out, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next tier list coming soon. Up next, I think you should watch a video from my friend CoolCheese, who's one of the best SMG players in Destiny history. We talk for almost an hour about how you can use them most effectively to become a better Crucible player. It's the video on the top right of your screen and also linked in the description.